Hello there guys, Elite Legionario here, and today I'm back at Medieval 2 Total War. It's been a very long time. I don't actually know why that always is. It's not because I don't like Medieval 2, because I love Medieval 2. It's my second favourite Total War. For some reason I just haven't really felt like playing it at the moment, and I just don't have a whole lot of replays for it at the moment, but I do have one for you today. This was a very good little village siege battle that myself, the Swedish Landsnick, did a number of weeks ago, probably now, but it was very good. I don't think he's uploaded it, and I've been meaning to get round to it, but there's just been a lot of other things. 31k always comes in the way of a lot of my Total Wars, because they're always so good. And then there's been a lot of Napoleon videos that I've been, well, not videos, but I've got a lot of Napoleon battles I need to do as well. And Rome too, and and other things as well. And I find myself, quite inundated trying to keep up with all the videos I got so many good ones lying around there. At least it's good from the perspective I always have content to upload that everyone hopefully enjoys. But it does mean sometimes certain Total War games perhaps get put on the back foot, not for any reason really, except that I've just got so much stuff there, and I might be in a bit of a slight favourable mood towards another Total War. And Medieval 2, I just haven't felt like it of late, but I have brought you a good battle today. So this was a 2v2 village siege. I'm commanding the Byzantine Empire, those badass surviving Romans, and my opponents are Levernicus, of course, and he's commanding Spain. Not a huge surprise there with him, although usually in a siege scenario he prefers England, but he's gone to his typical Spain. And then his ally is Julian V321, and he's commanding the Turks, and he also performed quite well in this battle. And of course my ally is the Swedish Landsnick with the Moors, and seeing as we're over on Swede's side of the battle, let's have a look-see. He's got 4 units of urban... Wait, 4 units of urban militia. That's his first wave of infantry, because in a siege scenario you usually want to work it in waves, and you want to have like a kind of like a medium sort of infantry probably taking the front wave, then a heavier infantry taking the next waves, and it's generally how we do it in a siege in Medieval 2. He's got obviously 4 of those, and then he's got 6 units of dismounted Christian Guard. These guys are very capable sword infantry indeed, the best that the Moors can field, and one of the best in the actual game as a whole, so it's a good unit. Then he's got Sudanese Javelinmen, 2 Sudanese tribesmen, which are light infantry, most likely just acting to work as support and numbers. He's got a general's bodyguard. He's got 2 camel gunners, the excellent unit they are. I think actually me and Swedes thought we were defending the village at first, but it turns out we were attacking. So it's a wee bit hard to use these kind of missile units when you're attacking like this, but we still managed to make it work, and we'll get into that as the battle progresses. We'll have a look at the defenders force now. Levernicus has got, now in a village, I actually forgot about this. I should have made the scaling of this battle smaller, I think, because in villages there's not a lot of room, and that was my fault. Also, Swedes has got a couple of dismounted Arab cavalry out there, which are spearmen. I think he forgot about them in his deployment, so they're out there. But as I was saying, yeah, villages can be a bit small. They're better for 1v1, to be honest. And I forgot about that. I probably should have made the scaling as small as possible, which I don't know if I think I was on normal scale. I should have gone to small. So if you're going to do like a 2v2 village, it's better to have a smaller scale, just because the room gets kind of crammy for the defenders, as you can see. But these guys managed to make it work anyway. So yeah, Levernicus has got, I think, is it 3? No, he's got 2 Chivalric Knight cavalry, and then he'll have a mixture of sword and bucklers, dismounted Chivalric Knights, and dismounted conquistadors. I can't really tell, and all that jumble in there. And then the Turks have got a whole heap of Janissary archers, Janissary heavy infantry, and Ottoman infantry, I think. Yep, and there's musketeers as well. They've both got musketeers here. We have some Afghan javelinmen, we've got Janissary musketeers, and I know we have some normal regular muskets here. So it'll be very interesting to see how they manage to make that work. My army, I won't pause. I have 4 units of Byzantine Guard archers, which are immediately opening up now. Then I have a mixture of, in the front, I believe it was 6 dismounted Laticon, and then it was 6 dismounted Byzantine Lancers, and I have 3 units of Vardaritai. I believe the cavalry was a max of 3, I think. Yeah, the cav was 3 and missile cav was 2. Here we see some of these Armenian cavalry coming out here to get out these spearmen. Swedes should be able to take this, although if I'd been Swedes I would have braced for this and stood still instead of taking that charge, because as you can see, even against spears, a good charge, and Arab cavalry are not really good spears, so they get destroyed on that charge relatively quickly. Had he been braced, he probably still would have lost the battle, but he would have killed more of these horses. He's really only killed about 6 horses, and the loss of that unit's, you know, but there's spearmen, it's not that big a loss. Up here, I run a quick cav strike on these guys here, knock these guys down to about 45. As you can see, these musketeers are getting knocked down. Trying to kind of crowd them for room, because musketeers, if they don't have the room, don't do as well. I'm also in loose formation here, so I don't take too many hits. And I'm going to use these Byzantine guard archers to just chop away at these crucial units here. The muskets have got to go, because otherwise the morale impact will not be very good for us. So over here, Swedes more braced as spearmen this time, and the result is as you can see, he actually routs them. And then I bring my guys over to help mop up. And I mean, Vardar Retai are very, very yes, pike and shot. I'm recording replays. Vardar Retai are very, very good horse archers, but they're also very good in the melee if you use them right. So over here I see some of his Afghan javelin is coming forward, so I'm going to run a quick charge on it, and I should be able to thin them out. As you can see, take a few of them down. Now, you do have to be a little bit careful when using horse archers like this, because obviously they are not heavy cavalry, but these are very good horse archers, one of the very best in the game. One of my favourite units in this game. And the Byzantine Empire as a whole is one of my favourite factions. I love this faction. It is badass. I love the whole connection to ancient, well not ancient Rome, but you know, Rome as a whole. It is connected to Rome. Here comes in a cav charge from Levinicus, but the problem Levinicus have here is he is very isolated. And I do take a few losses, but not too many. I'm in loose formation, remember, which helps me disperse my hits up a little bit. And then I decided to change to flaming arrows here. The hope is Levinicus is somewhat isolated from his support here, and that means this unit will suffer morale penalties. So fire arrows will further reduce that effect, or increase the effect of morale penalties on him, and that should stop him. Over here, as you can see, I get into these muskets now, and I'm starting to take them out, and I'm just constantly using my Vardar Retai and a constant barrage of quick lightning assaults, then a few missile strikes, and every time I do this, it's causing these guys to force a retreat, which is meaning my Byzantine archers are being able to shoot him up. Over here, Swede is doing basically the same thing with his bodyguard. His bodyguard's a lot stronger at this than my guys, but I do have that rapid kind of ability to retreat and disengage as I need. He's also been using his camel gunners to lower the morale, but needless to say, it's allowing us to take down their musketeers, because we're sort of staying at a range where they have to come out to the edge of the city, but as they do, it puts them in vulnerabilities to these cavalry strikes that we're running them. So Swedes is coming around with his camel guns here, and what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and use the camel gunners against these cavalry to rout them, because the cavalry is a potential nuisance, because we don't have a lot of our own cavalry. As you can see, Swedes has caught down these Armenian cavalry with his general, and that will kill them off, what's left of them anyway. But it does, as you can see, leave Swedes vulnerable to being shot here by these muskets, and that's something Swedes doesn't want, because just 1 or 2 volleys from muskets can severely lower even the best cavalry's morale very quickly, so you don't want to allow that to happen too much. But it does mean he's obviously exposed here, and Swedes is going to be able to get these Spanish ones instead, although his men didn't hold their lances there, as you can see, but needless to say, it still does good damage. On my side, as you can see, I'm using my horse archers to shoot at his general here. Swedes now is bringing over his camel gunners, and it's going to drop their morale. Here we see some cavalry here. See how they're shaken? They're shaken because they're further from their lines. They've been getting fire arrows and camel gunner shots, and now they're kind of isolated here. Now my guys didn't charge very well here. See how they only charged partially, but it didn't matter, it was enough because their morale was reduced that much. So I'm going to follow them through and try and rout these guys, or kill them while they're still routing. And that's what I'm going for there, but he's going to be able, the Turkish player is going to cover him here. But I do manage to get that unit basically halved, and we still managed to kill off Lavernicus's cavalry pretty effectively too, with Swede's guys right there. I believe I've sent, or I'm going to send, one of my horse archers to help Swedes. I might be wrong though. I thought I did, but I might not have. I know I do at some stage. It's been a few weeks since we did this battle, so I don't remember all the specifics. But again, we are running constant charges, and they're having to bring units out to protect their muskets. What they should do is bring these cavalry units out and just sit them out here. They would be at risk of being hit by the horse archers and the camel gunners, which wouldn't be good for them, but it would at least stop these musket level units from getting killed so easily by a cavalry. Now, Swede's general's bodyguard unit routes. I don't know if that was his general. I think it actually was his general, which was a bit of a disappointment for Swedes. Losing his general this early in the piece was not ideal. But as you can see, we've got the best part of the fight so far. As you can see, they've got 10% killed, we've got 21, so we have definitely got the best part of the fight so far. But when we get into the city, it becomes progressively more difficult. And as I said, we initially thought we were defending and we were going to use these units to sally forth and cause disruption. So we are a little bit more limited in our abilities to do as much disruption because most of the units are inside the city. Here now you can see Swedes used his generals here to distract rather this Janissary heavy infantry, so I could bring my Vardaritai in and take out some of these muskets. But that put me in range of these Ottoman infantry, so I have to disengage. But needless to say, we're kind of bringing our strikes together. And I mean, of course, I'm always able to shoot as well as I retreat. So I mean, horse archers used in this capacity are excellent units. Very well worth the time, guys. It's particularly the Byzantine ones, the Mongol ones. There's I've forgotten their names. What are they? The Russian ones. I know what they are. I can't think of their names for some reason. I've gone blank. The Devor. I just lost my memory on them there. The Devor can be used very well in this aspect, although they're a bit slower around the battlefield because of that armour. Then there are other ones too. The Sipahi's pretty good at it. The Mamluks are good at it. You know, there's some pretty good options at it here. Here we see Lavernicus now sends out some conquistadors. Now, I probably might run the odd charge on them, but only if it's a good angle, because conquistadors are very heavy infantry, and these are horse archers, and my guys are tired, so I do have to be very careful of this. I bring back some of my guys this way, just in case Lavernicus were to send any guys out. Now, Swedes lost his general there. I knew he lost his general earlier on in this battle. That is not helpful. Not helpful at all, but needless to say, it happened, so we had to deal with it. Now here again, these Janissary musketeers were isolated. There was nothing to defend them, so I'm able to get my Vardaritai in to cause some strife for them. It's unfortunate we didn't have any heavier cavalry right now because these conquistadors could have been killed. Over here we see one of these Puppies crossbowmen come forward, so we charge it. Swedes is out of ammo, I think, with his with his camels. They do chew up their ammo pretty quickly, but it has been able to cause them some serious problems for their morale. And as you can see, if you look through here, there's a lot of dead infantry units here. As you can see, sword and bucklers, conquistadors, chivalric knights. This is all being hit by my Byzantine guard archers, which are not a stellar archer unit. They're not bad. They're a decent archer unit. They're definitely not bad, but they're not like great. But they will do their job in this scenario. And to be honest, it's probably in due part because it's a village, and I forgot to put on small scale, which kind of makes the defense a little bit crammy. But the reason I like village sieges is for two reasons. They are usually nowhere near as long as castle or fortress or citadel level sieges, although this battle was quite long. But usually you can do them a lot quicker, and I personally don't like to be I can do one siege, 1 2-hour siege, and then I think I've got to take a break. It's some people can do them repetitively. I know several guys who do that, and that's fine if they want to do that. But me, I can usually only do one. Whereas when it's a village siege, I can do 1 or 2 or 3 even. And I mean, they're more of a 1v1 thing. But also, what I like about village sieges is they encourage a lot of outside the wall or outside the village activity, more so than a fortress or a castle. as you can see, as the attackers or defenders, you can be very aggressive with light kind of cavalry units and things like that. And I'm running constant strikes on these guys here as well, and they're taking heavy hits. And me and Swedes have done a pretty nice job. I mean, we, as you can see, have got 30. We've killed 30% of their forces. We haven't even started attacking the city, and we've done this basically with a few Vardaritai, some camel gunners, and a bodyguard, and a few archers. And that is a very good thing that you can do in these village sieges that you can't really do in the bigger sieges, and for that reason I rather like them. It's just a bit more varied. One of my guard archers did take has taken a few hits from various missile units as well as cavalry, but as you can see, Sweden's got some spears here. As depleted as they are, he's using them as a meat shield, just in case cavalry were to try and sally out on us there. Now looking at this now, although the camel gun has proved very useful in this fight, it would have been better for Swedes to have brought a more missile capable faction in this scenario. They've got good infantry, the Moors do, but they have crappy options for missile units. So, something like England was always good at this, France is always good, even like Venice would be good. Venice is good all the time. Here's a few more units here that got straight out. I'm going to quickly try and mop those up. Just trying to think of a few others with some good cheap, the Mongols and stuff, but then again the Mongols don't have the great infantry choice, so they wouldn't be that great. But anything that has a reasonable archer unit to work with is a good choice in these scenarios. Crossbowmen would be alright, but they need flat trajectories, so I personally find archers are actually better in these kind of battles. Now here we see Levinicus come out with his cavalry, trying to get a bit of a charge in. Unfortunately here they don't get their lances down. My guard archers are now out of ammo. Here we see Levinicus' general here, but as you can see that unit actually routes immediately. Why? Because it's so far from its support line and it got swamped, basically. Now we're going to attempt to get this general's unit here, and I think yes, Swedes still did have some ammo left. That is also why these two Spanish units routed so quickly, because they were swamped by superior numbers and they were getting shot by camel guns, which massively dropped their morale. And that combination can cause even the sturdiest units to rout very rapidly. At this stage, Swedes and myself are going to start beginning the assault. Over here, as you can see, I am going to send my guard archers in first. They're out of ammo now, so I'm going to send them. Over here I'm using my Byzantine guard lancers. Now this is where it gets tricky, because all these Janissary archers are going to be constantly hailing fire down. Not fire up. Arrows down on us, and that is going to be exceptionally difficult, and there's not anything we can do about that while we're attacking. And this is where, as Swedes had some missile units, we could have used them to chop them up more before invading, and that would have been a useful little trick. Using the Turks in conjunction with Spain was a very good choice in my opinion, because Spain has that super powerful infantry with the conquistadors and other chivalric knights and things, while the Turks have the massive missile superiority and can lay the stakes down and still have some sturdy enough infantry units to hold. It's a good combination of defense. They're good together, those two factions, in defending. So anyway, yeah, we've got some nice close-ups here. I get a few routes on these puppies crossbowmen here. But this battle was going to be a real slogfest. The Byzantines are a good siege faction, good infantry choices, decent archer choices, and enough in the cavalry department. The Vardaritai are excellent if you use them right. So I find they're a good siege faction, and I just love the Byzantine faction as a whole. It's a great faction. So if we look up through here, we can see missile fire coming all the way through, and it's Swedes duking it down on this end of the battle. And we're certainly having in for one heck of a good battle up here. So it's definitely close. Now me and Swedes were considering attacking from another angle here. We wanted to put the camel gunners through here, and I think fire their final ammunition, try and put a breakdown in here. But we're pretty held up here. We're doing okay at the moment though, but as we progressively get in closer, we become more under threat from the Ottoman infantry. We can only hope to preserve our strongest units, like my dismounted Ladikon for instance, and Swedes' Christian Guard as much as possible for the final stages of the battle, and hope that the ammunition has been depleted, because this battle does come down to the wire quite a bit. Some lovely close-ups here. It's always wonderful to watch Medieval 2 soldiers duking it out like this. Truly is a gorgeous game still. I don't base games on graphics, but Medieval 2 is a nice mixture of, I think, graphics and still the old classic feel of Total War, and that's a wonderful thing. Here we see these javelins are throwing their javelins in. That's always a bit of a nuisance because it's armor piercing, obviously. Over here, as you can see, I've got my guard archers fighting in, although Lavernicus makes a pretty nice move here and brings his cavalry in, his cavalry general in, and that will probably rout them. Yep, it starts routing some of them. So I'm going to reinforce with a dismounted Ladikon over there, and hopefully be able to pin his general down, because if I pin it down to melee, I should probably be able to kill him, and if I kill his general, have a morale detrimental effect. But you see how well this Turkish player is working with Lavernicus? Lavernicus is doing the footwork up the front, mostly. But the Turkish general is using his missile units, his javelins and his archers to constantly pick away at us, and this is why Spain and the Turks are a good combination together in this capacity. And it's even better if you actually allow Nafatoons. It's extremely dangerous and very difficult to stop, and that's always nasty. Now actually, come to think of it, I think Swedes might have some Hashashim somewhere. Yes, here we go, some Hashashim. I've forgotten about this. Of course, you can't see them when they deploy, but yes, he had some Hashashim. Hashashim are a great unit for sieges. They're less useful in field battles because they're lower numbers, but when you're in a choke point with a strong infantry sword unit like Hashashim, the 2 hit points and everything, it's a good unit to use all round. Because you've got to have that kind of power, and you're always sort of attacking, and you want to try and concentrate your numbers and your power down the siege. You don't want to fight piecemeal, but you always have reserves as well. As you can see, there's a chain route there among these militia, and one of the Christian Guard there from Swedes, which was not good, but they should come back. But our guys are getting quite tired at this stage, and we are definitely advancing forward here, but we are getting tired. Our men are getting tired, more so than they are, and that is always the thing too when you're attacking. You men usually tire more on the attack, which doesn't always help, and the constant barrage of javelins and various other missile units is having a toll on our attacking approach. But if we want to make the attack, we can't avoid it, so we try opening a third lane here of attack, with the Hashashim leading from the front and supported by other units. But this is again another problem a bit in these in these sieges. There's only so much power you can get down at the point. These guys here are not really fighting and are taking missile fire, but in case we make a breakthrough, you do need that mass there so you can push through. But we recognise at this stage that this is just, we're taking missile fire here, and they're not going to break. They're not going to break because we have a General's Bodyguard unit there that's rallying them. We have Chivalric Knights, we have Conquistadors in reserve, and we have enough skirmish units there from the Turks to keep that in support. So I said to Swedes to disengage, because this is going to rout if he doesn't. And as you can see, they're all really shaken, and they were relatively fresh. One of my units routs here. I believe that's what is that? That's a Ladikon. That's not a good loss. But Swedes, I don't know if he routes quick enough here, but as you can see, these guys are shaken, so these will mass rout pretty soon. Up here, you can see that the Turks now committed some of his missile units, so that would assume they're out of ammunition, which is good. We need them out of ammunition. Because the Turk units are still strong, quite strong in the melee, and especially if they're fighting tired troops. If they're fighting fresh ones, they won't do great, but they're fighting tired. At this stage, we've kind of made that initial breach, at least on my side. Swedes are still trying to get over here. We've sort of made that initial breach into the city on 2 sides here, as you can see, but it's when you get up to these final entry points here into the actual square where it gets very difficult. I decided to launch an assault on this side, to support Swedes' assault on this side, but that causes a mass rout there because it's more of a matter of how much force you have concentrated, and there's not a lot of force concentrated there, and that causes a rout. So there's a lot of little things like that, but Swedes was bringing more men along to support me here. These guys will come back. Over here, I noticed that a good number of Swedes' infantry had routed, so I brought some of my infantry around here to help him out. Now you may notice that Swedes' camels are here. This is to use the scare effect of camels against the general's bodyguard there. Hopefully it might rout, and the routing general will have a good effect for us, and hopefully potentially cause a higher rout later. So just having the camels nearby enemy cavalry will reduce their morale, just because they're camels. Now over here I'm making progress. I am making steady progress in here, and I've still got some reserves. I believe that's my general actually. Yeah, I preserve my general for absolutely as long as possible in this fight. I'm going to try and commit him at the last part of the fight. I don't want him committing first. I want him to be able to commit later on, so he'll be fresh, but he'll also be able to have his rally ability kind of in that last few initial stages of the fight. Over here, some of the Turks came out of the city, and I was able to sandwich them between my two guys here. As you can see, he's reinforcing here with some Ottoman infantry. I don't know if the Turk players got some Hashashim. The Turks can bring them. Again, an excellent unit, especially when you're defending, because of their high hit points. And it's hard to, when you're attacking, you're in these narrow alleyways, it's hard to, as the attacker, to get your numbers down. And it's always critical you try and attack in a way that allows you to maximize your numbers. See how I've got quite a number of units here, and they're all engaged, and that's enabling me to actually win here. Whereas Swedes is having a harder time because most of those units are banked up at the back. Same over here when we try attacking here, and it's very critical. If you have to try and get your numbers down en masse together, because if you can do that, you have a higher chance of success, just because you've got more power in the vicinity, and it won't have a negative morale effect on you. And that is always very crucial, but it's not always very easy to do it in these narrow entryways. And we're doing a better job of it here because we're getting numbers 4, but as you go further in, it gets more and more narrow, and as the attacker, that's always the problem. Whereas the defender, you usually got all your units amassed together, always close to each other, so the defender always has that advantage of having the morale, and then that kind of power always in the vicinity. So it does make the defense quite strong. And as you can see, there's that is badass, man. He just turned him around and smashed him in the back with the sword. Wonderful. That was the end of that Turkish general. But yeah, as you can see, we're definitely grinding it out there pretty aggressively, but it's proven to be pretty hard. And I'm just going to pause. It appears I have a bit of lag. I do apologise. Is that going to stop? Yes, I think it stopped. So yeah, but I've got the numbers down here, and I've still got my general reserve, and every time my guys look like they might be sort of shaken or anything like that, just pop a rally, and that'll get them back up to maybe a little bit better morale, and they should stick it out there, you see. So over here we make our breach. Now I see the Swedes don't attack here again because they've got that numbers amassed there, and these two would just rout. So we're not going to attack here until we've made a significant breach somewhere else, because it's all we can really do. At this stage, as you can see, Swedes has actually made his breach here, but the Vernicus has been smart. You see how he's reserved his conquistadors as much as possible? Conquistadors are super powerful heavy infantry, the best in the game, and if you can conserve them for a later game, you have a very high chance of winning because they are a very hard unit to break. Spain is always a good siege faction, whether you're attacking or defending. Excellent infantry, good missile support. Spain's good everywhere. Spain is just superb. And it's because of things like this. It's very hard. As you see, he's still got men reserved here. And although we got off to a wonderful start, as you can see, we now only have a 15% advantage. And things start to slow up for us quite a bit, and it gets progressively more difficult to make that final breach, because as you can see, there are dismounted conquistadors, all free, and there are a few gun units too which are having a morale penalty effect on us. Swedes has not been able to make good headway over here. I've made more headway than him, to be honest. I've been able to get in further, I probably did more damage because I had those missile units that enabled me to wear him down a bit, and this made the approach into the city easier on the side. And that is why the Moors are a little bit of a double-edged sword when you want to, or kind of use them. They're good with the infantry and stuff, but they have very limited missile support, and that is always a problem with the Moors, especially on a village siege where there's a lot of open action. A lot of missile fire is very constant. So it's a good faction if you can get the infantry down and that sort of thing, but without that missile support it can be very difficult. So it's hard to, not always the easiest to use. That's why I prefer using the Byzantines here. I think I have the advantage because I have the infantry power that matches the Moors, but I have the missile units if I need them, and that is always very useful in a siege. So that's the thing. So you've got to take a lot of factors into account. And a village siege is a lot more open. There's the buildings are shorter or lower in height and things like that, so missile units have got more function, I guess, to maneuver, and that is always very dangerous on the battlefield. Now here's a realistic thing they could do here, if they wanted to, would be to actually move units outside the city now, because we don't have any cavalry units left. We might have some camel gunners actually, but they probably wouldn't be too much of a threat. But the Turkish player could move missile units out if he's got ammunition and potentially go for flank shots. It is a wee bit risky because they'll be unsupported, but they would be able to get flank shots, and it would be very hard for us to disengage to go after them because they're tired, even exhausted, and we're pinned down fighting our opponents. Swedes and I decide to push in again on this side. You need to put as much pressure down on multiple angles as possible because it's very difficult to be able to make use of your strengths if you're only fighting in piecemeal engagements. But Levernicus was smart. He reserved his conquistadors later on, and that is going to make a huge difference over here. It's going to be extremely hard to get through them. What we're trying to do is trying to walk our men forward so as to break up their formation. But look at this, he's got another Chevrolet Knight here, so this flank is very, very heavily defended, going to be very hard to breach. What we're going to try and do is we're going to try to come through here again, because as you can see, pretty narrow on the defense there, and we'll probably try it, maybe, I don't know if we try it over here again, I can't recall. But yeah, it's at this stage, I'm still making headway into the site over here, but this is where these Ottomans did very well. The Ottoman infantry is good. The reason the Ottoman infantry is so useful as an archer unit is its very high defense. It has much higher defense than the Janissary archer, and that makes it a capable reserve melee unit for later stage of the siege where the enemy heavy infantry is somewhat tired, and they can work as a reserve unit, and they can hold units out for a while. And it's a testament to how long it took me to get through these Ottoman infantry, these archers, supported by just a few Spanish sword units. It took me a very long time to breach them, and that was very tricky. Now Levernicus puts his general's unit over here just to help with morale, and as you can see, it routes these Moorish units. And as I said, up here we might be able to do a bit of damage, but look at it here, because of the nature of things, we can't push our units forward enough. So there's another thing, and these tight alleyways, it makes it much harder to get those numbers down, like I said earlier on, and that can be very crucial. And a good defender will exploit that feature as much as possible, to make it very hard for the attacker, and that is where the defender has that advantage. You can get him into the choke points, and that is where I recommend in sieges defending. Defend at the walls, defend at the choke points. Don't give the attacker room, because they get room, they can get their numbers down, and getting their numbers down is usually something you don't want. In most cases, the defender might have more money but less men. In this case, it was actually fairly even. I think the defenders had, I don't know, I think our attackers actually had a little bit more money, but even so, their defensive positions were very good. But that's what I highly recommend. In most cases, you don't want to let the attackers get any room, because they can concentrate their numbers. They can usually use that to gain the advantage. So trying to block people at wall breaches or tight alleyway choke points, that's the way to defend. And that'll give you time to use your missile units to shoot at your opponent if you've still got missiles left. As you can see over here, we have another route going on through here. And up through here, we are attacking, and we are grinding these conquistadors down, but it's taking forever. And that is the problem. They are exceptionally hard to breach. A superb infantry unit, and we are getting there, but it's just taking an incredibly long time to actually do so. And that is what's making this very hard. And the thing is, at this stage, your troops get to a point where they're so exhausted that mass rout is a very serious problem. So you need to try and get your breach before that starts to happen. As you can see, Swedes and myself are not getting that, and it was a wee bit frustrating over here just how long these Ottoman infantry survived against me, a testament to their superb defence as an archer unit, which enables them to perform a secondary reserve melee role rather effectively. And the result is it's always very difficult in those final stages of the siege. So that's why, as I said at the start, always using reserves, trying to reserve. You need to get the numbers down and be concentrated, but you always need to have your reserves, and preferably use the strongest units as reserves later on. Just like Levernicus has done, and just like I've done with my generals unit. I have a relatively fresh general's bodyguard, Ladicon here, but Levernicus left conquistadors, the strongest infantry unit of the game, and the strongest infantry in this battle, as reserves towards the end, and that was very crucial because it gives them the edge of being able to resist at the end of the battle, and that's very key. You don't want to waste your best assets early on, basically, and that's why it's very important. All those little things, even though I might be, some of you might think I'm being a bit repetitive here, or some of the stuff I talk about maybe even tedious to some of you. It's all these little things that make all the difference in a siege in any Total War game, but very particularly Medieval 2, because Medieval 2 is a real grind down. You've got to have the patience for a siege in this game, which is why, as I said at the start, I usually only play one or so at a time, unless I'm in a very patient sort of mood, because you just don't want to be hasty, especially if you're the attacker. A hasty attacker loses. I've had teammates before who get real angry at me because I'm taking so much time when I'm attacking, and they want to go in, they go in by themselves and they get wiped out, and you have to be patient when you're going to do a siege in Medieval 2. It's just a requirement, because if you're going to do it properly, you've got to try and use all these little tools to your advantage, because it's very nitpicky in Medieval 2 Total War. You've got to get all those little bits out of all your troops, and that's where it comes to knowing in sieges the strengths of your faction, the styles of your attack, and all the things you need to do to get those kind of advantages. And I mean, a player like Levernicus is an expert sieger. In fact, I think he spends most of his, probably 80% of his Medieval 2 gaming sieging. He must just love his sieges. I do very much enjoy my sieges, but as I said, I usually only like to do one or so at a time. I prefer field battles. I prefer the active actions of maneuver. Especially as a defensive siege player, I think there is some weaknesses to being a siege player, in that if you constantly play siege, especially as the defender, you lose a bit of your micro, because you're not actively doing a whole lot of maneuvering on the battlefield, because you're more just sitting in your town square defending. So while it certainly teaches you the value of things like what units are good in the reserve game, and things like that, when to time things, and how to kind of place your attack and your defences and that sort of thing, it doesn't give you a lot of kind of flexibility of things going on a regular kind of field battle. So I usually like to mix it up with a bit of balance, so I don't get either kind of a bit lazy at one and overly good at the other. I prefer to keep it balanced, because I like to be able to cover all sorts of types of videos for you guys, and I enjoy all types of battles. But as you can see at this stage, those well placed hits by their missile units from the Turk player, and Levernicus reserving his strongest infantry units towards the end, is starting to pay dividends. Myself and Swedes are running out of momentum, and that is always very tricky. It's very close though, and we've done as much as we can here, but there's just there's only so much you can do, you know. And again, there's only 4 angles of attack here, and dividing our forces onto 4 angles is not always good. It's better to get that concentration numbers down. So that's why Swedes and myself have mostly worked to fight on these 2 angles here. We've tried attack on these 2 angles here, but we just didn't have enough numbers, and that's the problem. You really do need to concentrate your numbers in medieval 2 Total War when you're sieging, especially in these battles. As you can see now, we've now only got a 6% advantage, or 7%, but when we had a 15% advantage at the start, when we did those excellent opening manoeuvres with the Valeritai and the camel gunners and the general's bodyguard there. But they have basically played a game of attrition. The Spanish infantry is very, very powerful, and has worked very well in support with the Turks with the excellent missile, and basically they've ground our troops down, and the attack has lost its momentum, and our guys are starting to rout now, and that's basically a very common method to siege in medieval 2 Total War, and overall a siege in any Total War game, particularly medieval 2, obviously, because its sieges are very, very good, and basically that's always the aim of a lot of defensive players. So you always have to take things into account with what factions you're using, what units you're using, and Spain always warrants a lot of planning and concern for this sort of thing, because obviously their troops are very, very strong. Now here you see the Vernicus has actually got run behind me with his general's bodyguard, and he causes a mass rout with a rear charge there, and I believe I just admitted defeat at this stage because I could see the writing was on the wall, and Swedes pretty much does the same. So it was a very, very close game. Very close game. It was right down to the wire, but superbly handled defence there by Levernicus and Julian V321. As you can see, I have clocked over 1,000 kills there, which is rewarding, but kills don't mean much if you don't get the win in most scenarios. Swedes has just got shy of 700 with 68 captures, and then Julian has 900 and Levernicus just shy of 600. So we had a good game there. I felt we had some pretty excellent opening moves, but superbly set up defence there. Spain reserving his elite units in that later stage, and he was just able to grind us down there in the end. But I'm pretty happy with my troops. My swords here have done some pretty high kills all the way through, pretty much. The guard archers, as you can see, very well done, and the Vardaritai, they did well as well. This was a good game. It was a very good game. We didn't quite manage to pull off the victory, but it was a very, very good game there, and it came right down to the wire. So, excellent game to all of us. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Of course, Swedish Landsknecht has a YouTube channel, so I'll be linking that. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Excellent commentary, an experienced Total War player who knows his way around the battlefield and his way around YouTube, commentating his videos. So you won't be disappointed if you check that out. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon next time.